What recourse does one have if they have been treated unjustly by an institution? According to the National Baha'i Constitution, as well as the local bylaws of a local spiritual assembly, an individual believer has the right always to go to a higher institution in the form of an appeal. You can go as high as the Universal House of Justice itself. But you should also realize that when you do so, you should inform your local assembly. The ideal would be to, for example, if you are appealing from a decision of the local assembly, to give your appeal sent, to have your appeal sent to the National Spiritual Assembly by the local assembly. You can send a copy if you like yourself, but it has to be with the knowledge, with the information of the local assembly. If you're doing something from the National Assembly to the Universal House of Justice, the National Spiritual Assembly should be informed, and your appeal preferably should be through the National Assembly. Or you do it, you keep the National Assembly informed. Because in each case, local assemblies and national assemblies not only have the right, but the duty also to express their own opinion. So they don't go only by what you and I may have written to the higher authority. Consultation in the chamber of the House of Justice. Please share your experience. I should very briefly mention this. I have been on local assemblies during my lifetime. I've been on national spiritual assemblies also, and I've been on the Universal House of Justice. But my experience on the Universal House of Justice has been something totally different, believe me. And it is simply this, that I realized that there was deep, sincere love binding these 9 members. It was a blessing. The love and unity that the members had for each other, whether they were new members or old members throughout these 40 years, there was no change, same thing. It was as if 9 brothers were consulting together. And if this bond of love and harmony exists on local assemblies, it would be wonderful. Then they truly will become magnets to attract divine blessings and divine confirmations. The same thing applies to national assemblies. That was something that I felt during this entire period. God is my witness. And the sign of unity is simply one sentence. Because there are many Persians here I see. I'll quote it in Persian and I'll give you the translation into English, my own translation. Zorr har yek zorr kol, khair har yek khair kol. It means the happiness of one, the welfare of one, is the welfare of all. The distress of one is the distress of all. This is unity. So if there is bad news for one member, it is as if all the other 8 share the same unhappiness. If there is joy, some good news for one member, it was a joy and happiness for the other. This is unity. When you have such degree of unity, and God knows I have experienced it on the Universal House of Justice, then there is true unity, true friendship, true bond of love and unity. Then you receive divine help, divine assistance. Was the distinctive penmanship of the guardian due to his being left-handed? Yes. Shoghi Effendi was left-handed in everything but his handwriting. And that was undoubtedly because he went to school, to a Jesuit school, were very rigid, very strict, and they forced all the students, because I went to similar schools, use your right hand. So Shoghi Effendi used his right hand when writing. Everything else was left. And the fact that our friend has succeeded in arriving at this conclusion is really remarkable. I congratulate you. Please tell one story about being in the presence of Shoghi Effendi. I'm so glad it says one story. I was on pilgrimage in 1957, and January 1957, the very year that Shoghi Effendi passed away. And there were six of us in that particular group. In those days, it wasn't 350 and 400 believers in each group. There were very few. And so we had been in Baji in the morning, and we came in the afternoon. And then we saw that Shoghi Effendi was in the gardens, and he signaled to us to join him. So we were in the pilgrim house. We ran to reach him as he was walking in the gardens near the shrine of the Baha'i. And one of us was an elderly gentleman. So when we arrived there, he started coughing. And because he was elderly, of course, those of us who were younger, like me, we stayed behind. All right. So when we arrived there and he was coughing, Shoghi Effendi stopped and turned him. He said, "You are tired." He answered, he said, "Beloved guardian, we were tired. Now that we are in your presence, all our fatigue has vanished." Boy, he did not like that. He did not like that. So he told him very lovingly, "Why did you say this?" This poor man did not know what to do, what to say. Believe me, if there was a hole there, he was ready to go into the hole and bury himself there. There was total silence. Then, with the same loving, tender tone, he said, "What you should have said was, we were tired, but now that we are in the precincts of the shrine of the Baha'i, all our fatigue has vanished. This is what you should have said." Then he added, "You did not come here to see me." God knows we were all there to see him, but never mind. Then, after a pause, he said, "You have come here to visit the shrines. The friends should not fix their gaze on individuals." And counted himself among individuals. That was the degree of his evanescence, his selflessness, his humility. Having said that, he turned his face and we followed. Did the guardian leave a will? Not in the regular sense, in the ordinary sense. No, he did not leave a will. And the hands have confirmed that they looked over the room of Shoghi Effendi, his office, his bedroom, everywhere. There was no sign of any will. And the hands have testified to this. But there is a letter written by Shoghi Effendi to Dr. Muschligal, Albert Muschligal. He was the hand of the cause in Germany. At that time, there was an idea in Germany, in the German Baha'i community, to publish a book which would be a compilation of the will and testament of Baha'u'llah, the will and testament of Abdul Baha, because it was known to the Baha'is that Abdul Baha did not like it to be in the same volume, in the same book as that of Baha'u'llah, distinction has to be made. So Dr. Mushlegel wanted to see if this was proper, if it was appropriate. Answer of Shoghi Effendi. This was 1 year after he had written The Dispensation of Baha'u'llah, which is one of the chapters of the book, The World Order of Baha'u'llah, compilation. He wrote back to Dr. Mushlegel. He said, it's okay in this case, but I suggest that you also add to this book my own message to the American Baha'i community, published under the title of The Dispensation of Baha'u'llah. Because, and that is the important point, because it is an invaluable supplement to the will and testament of Abdul Baha and the will and testament of Baha'u'llah. So it will be 3 documents. He described his dispensation as a supplement, an annex, a supplement to what documents? Wills and testament. In other words, his dispensation was like a will and testament, because it's in the order of wills and testaments. It's all right, because it is an invaluable supplement. That is the closest we have. But to pilgrims, he had often said, I have written, and he used to refer even to Persian when he was speaking in Persian. He said, I have written the dispensation. It is like my will and testament. But these were all pilgrims' notes. Until the German National Spiritual Assembly published this compilation of letters addressed to members of its community, and this beautiful letter, written in 1935, 1 year after the dispensation was written. So the friends should be sure of 2 things. That he knew very well that he was not writing a will in the ordinary, regular way. And he did not want to write a will in that way. Second, the fact that he did not leave such a will does not mean that he died suddenly. He did not know that he was dying. There was no time for him to write a will. That's a fantasy. No, it's not so. There are so many evidences to show that Shoghi Effendi knew very well he was passing away. I remember during the interregnum, Janab Samandari, Hand of the Cause of God, maybe some of you may have met Janab Samandari. He used to tell the friends, beloved friends, this was during the interregnum, you should be well assured, he would say, that if Shoghi Effendi had any doubt about the security of the faith of Baha'u'llah after his passing, he would not have passed away. That was this man, like a rock. You can be sure that Mr. Samandari was right. What he said, his understanding was correct. And there are so many evidences. There is no time to mention other points. What are your thoughts on the pupil of the eye? What significance does African Americans have in the Baha'i faith? You see, Shoghi Effendi has clearly said that the African believers, he was talking about the African believers in Africa. And of course it applies to the African American believers as well. He wrote it put it in writing that he's very touched by the purity of heart of the African believers. This purity of heart was something that touched his heart. Many of the African believers would immediately write letters to Shoghi Effendi. And in their letters, they would express their love for him. Shoghi Effendi was very moved. He would immediately answer. They would ask him even questions. This gentleman that I hugged when I first came in, he's not too well, he had to leave. This man was one of those very first believers in Uganda who wrote so many letters to Shoghi Effendi, some of them expressing just his love. Shoghi Effendi put a picture of this gentleman in the mansion of Baha'u'llah. When you enter the mansion, you have the big hall, and there is a wall ahead of you, in front of you, which has the design of the temple on Mount Carmel. And there are a number of pictures under that. And one of them is the picture of Herbert Sikombe, because he had this pure heart. And I was very sorry to see him. He was not too well. He had come a long way just to be present, just for the two of us to hug each other. That was all he said. He had come just for that. Now, this is purity of heart. These things Shoghi Effendi valued, you know. Now, the pupil of the eye, through that, when you have purity of heart, you can see the truth very quickly. The pupil of the eye sees, perceives immediately. And the inner reality of the person also flows through that pupil of the eye. It's purity of the heart. So I think that is the reason. This is my personal opinion. Could you share one of your favorite memories of Amatul Baha Ruhiyyih Khanum? Yeah. You know, I have often said when this question is asked, I always tell the friends that the members of the Universal House of Justice were amazed by the attitude of Ruhiyyih Khanum after the election took place and after the passing, of course, of Shoghi Effendi. The interregnum came to an end. The way Ruhiyyih Khanum turned her entire being, her heart and soul, her entire focus upon the Universal House of Justice. Those of you who have met Ruhiyyih Khanum know very well, she had very strong views, and she had a very strong personality. And she would come to the meetings of the House of Justice. The House of Justice, out of respect to her, had told her from day one that any time that she wants to meet with the House of Justice, she's welcome. But of course, she never did that. She always asked for permission ahead of time. And she would come. She would express her opinion. Wow. Firmly, determinedly, clearly, emphatically. That was Khanum. She says, now that's my view. Please let me know what you decide. And in every case, as soon as the decision was taken, and when it was conveyed to Ruhiyyih Khanum, immediately, 100%, wholeheartedly, she would accept. The same focus that she had for the Guardian, she directed now on the House of Justice. And this was to the very last breath of her life. Shoghi Effendi's voice was never recorded. Is it true? It is true. Was he ever reproached? Yes, many times. To your knowledge. It is to my knowledge. He refused. He even did not like anyone to take his photograph, his picture. He did not want any of the friends to say, to believe, to talk to others, saying that, oh, Shoghi Effendi is a second Abdul Baha. Oh, he did not like that. This is not true. Shoghi Effendi is Abdul Baha young again. Oh, no, that was not right. He would be upset. He did not want the friends to think like that. Abdul Baha was the mystery of God. There was one mystery of God, not two. He was, all right, a sign of God. He was the guardian of the faith, but not the mystery of God. That was Shoghi Effendi. He said that there was a distance between Abdul Baha and Baha'u'llah. Because Abdul Baha was not a manifestation of God. Although he was the mystery of God, but he was not a manifestation of God. Although in him the qualities of being a human being, they were so blended, according to Shoghi Effendi, with his spiritual station that he had, but it was unique. This blending was unique because he had superhuman knowledge, being the mystery of God. He had superhuman perfection because of that. So he said, but he was not a manifestation. So there was a distance between him and Baha'u'llah. There was also a distance, this is in the dispensation of Baha'u'llah. There was a distance between him and Abdul Baha, between Shoghi Effendi and Abdul Baha. And the distance between him and Abdul Baha was far greater than the distance between Abdul Baha and Baha. In writing, in his so-called will, which is the dispensation of Baha. That was Shoghi Effendi. He neither agreed to have his voice recorded or his chanting recorded, and he didn't want anyone to take a special photograph of himself. The picture that you see in the Priceless Pearl, the last picture taken, he consented towards the end of his life for Mr. Maxwell to use his camera for this last picture. That was the only one. And Mr. Maxwell took that picture. Does Baha'u'llah intervene to remove our difficulties when we pray, or just will help us to accept our circumstances? Also, this is for prophets to answer. But I will venture to give my opinion. I think the decision rests with him. We don't know. We pray. Whatever he does, that's it. We don't know. He might pray and give you what you want, and he might finally enable you to accept whatever in the condition that you are. You should remember three things about prayer. First, you must remember, before I give you the three alternatives, there is a preamble. The preamble is this, that take, for example, one of the prayers of Baha'u'llah that you find in your prayer book. Can't remember the page. Baha'u'llah, it's one of the prayers of Baha'u'llah. Baha'u'llah makes us say, he puts this sentence in our mouth. Say, O God, I know not what profiteth me and what harmeth me. Do I believe in this? I must believe in this. Of course, I do not know what is good for me and what is bad for me. There is a whole tablet of Baha'u'llah on this subject which has not yet been translated. But this sentence is in this prayer book, translated by Shoghi Effendi. I know not what profiteth me and what harmeth me. Therefore, when I ask in my prayer for something, if I say, please give this to me, and it implies, give it to me now. I know this is good for me. But Baha'u'llah says, you don't know. Therefore, there are three possibilities. One, yes, this is good for you and I'll give it to you. And now, there you go. You got it. But this is only one we disregard the other two possibilities. The other two possibilities are, and for the second one, there is a tablet revealed by Baha'u'llah. It's not just Ali speaking. He says, many times what you ask, it's not the time for it. But it will be good for you. Therefore, I will give it to you later. And I'll give you something even better than what you have asked, if you are patient. Second possibility. Third possibility, I am not giving it to you. This is poison for you. You don't know. I have said you don't know what is good for you, what is bad for you. Forget it. But we go on insisting. An American pilgrim came to Akka, asked Abdul Baha, I don't know why, whatever I ask God to give me, He never gives it to me. Why? Abdul Baha answered one short sentence. It is because you insist. What does insist mean? Insist means, I know. I know what is good for me. After all, I know myself. Therefore, I know what is good for me. Therefore, I'm asking God to give it to me, and give it to me right now, without delay, as I am requesting. You see? So, let's leave this subject. What is the mighty force Baha'u'llah mentions in the Kitab-e-Ahd? Kitab-e-Ahd is the will and testament of Baha'u'llah. He asks us, he also asks us to fix on it our influence, our unifying influence. Yes, I know what you mean. Yes, there is a passage in the Kitab-e-Ahd, which is the will and testament of Baha'u'llah. They have asked Abdul Baha what it is. And Baha'u'llah said, it is the power and force of unity. They have again asked Shoghi Effendi what it is. They were not satisfied with Abdul Baha's. Shoghi Effendi answered, and it is published, and you find it in the Lights of Guidance, the answer that he has given. He says, it is the power of the covenant. Because the power of the covenant unifies. It's the source of unity. Often it seems whenever believers make strides in their service to the cause, they are given a formalized role in the faith. Is this healthy? Is there power in allowing believers to serve without, the handwriting is very difficult, especially with my poor eyes, so I hope I'm reading it correctly. To serve, being called to serve, I don't know what that means, in a formalized role. I think generally I can understand what is being said. You see, one of the distinctions of the faith of Baha'u'llah is that authority is not vested in an individual, even if he is elected over and over again. There is no authority. Authority is vested in the institutions, not in the members of the institutions. The members of the institutions are members of the institutions. They have been elected to consult. The result of the consultation is to be obeyed. The individual member has no authority. This is one of the distinctions of this faith. The counselors are individuals. They have no authority. Auxiliary board members are individuals. They have no authority. Members of local assemblies, the members themselves do not have authority. The assembly has the authority. National assemblies, the members of national assemblies individually have no authority. But the National Spiritual Assembly, as a body, as an institution, has authority. This is one of the distinctions of this faith, dear friends. So these people, how can they be clergy? They are elected. What can they do? They cannot resign. If they have a good reason, they will resign. But if they are elected, they have to obey. And they serve on the institution for the number of months or years that the term is. But individually, they cannot be considered as clergy. What is the prime driving force for the American community? The prime driving force for the American community is to realize its destiny. And its destiny could be lost. And I read you the text. Neglect on the part of each one of us residing in the United States, or apathy, lack of enthusiasm, indifference. Dear friends, you should feel that this religion belongs to you, and you belong to it. You own it. It is yours. You cannot be indifferent to what you own. How can you? It's yours. You have to love it, to serve it selflessly, with detachment, wholeheartedly, for the rest of your life. As long as you say, because Shoghi Effendi clearly says, there are two types of Baha'is. There are those whose religion is Baha'i, and there are those who live for the faith. Please don't be among those who are just feeling that my religion is Baha'i. That's it. It's not good. This is a minimum. And the minimum is dangerous, dear friends. A minimum is if you take the scale of 100, the minimum would be 50. Please, please, don't be 50. Don't be even 50.1. It is still dangerous. You can easily slip into 49. Leave the 50s, for God's sake. Go into the 60s. Go into the 70s. Go into the 80s. Just approach the 90s. You cannot be 100. If you want to be 100, you will become Abdul Baha. And none of us is Abdul Baha. He was the perfect exemplar. He had 100%. But for you and me to be 50, this mediocre minimum, is it worthy? Work hard through prayer, through effort, through sacrifice. You go higher up with every passing day. Believe me, every day counts, every hour counts. How do we practice to forget or overlook our differences and consult in Baha'i community in order to achieve unity? This question of forgiving is so important in the Baha'i faith, to have a sin-covering eye. Abdul Baha had a sin-covering eye. There is a letter from Abdul Baha. It is in the archives. It clearly says to this recipient, he was in the United States. We don't know what he has written, but from the way Abdul Baha is responding, it's clear what he has written. He had been complaining about the Baha'is. This man is doing this, that man is doing that. Gossip, backbiting, full. Abdul Baha is very upset with this person. This man had been on pilgrimage. He had seen Abdul Baha. So Abdul Baha tells him, he says, you came here, you saw me, you saw how I deal with people. You knew that I knew what the weaknesses were, what the shortcomings were, but I acted in such a way that I have not noticed. That's how. To such an extent, I concealed that people thought, Baha'is thought that I was weak-minded. I did not notice these things. I was prepared for the friends to think like this, but I wouldn't say anything. Keep quiet, conceal. How many times does Baha'u'llah call on us to conceal the shortcomings of others, to conceal it, not to broadcast it? If I see somebody doing something wrong, I come home, one of the first things I tell my wife, you know, Violette, I tell you, I saw such and such. Of course, please don't say this to anybody, but I saw that. Now, I should not do that. I should conceal, I should be quiet, even to my wife. But what does my wife do? I don't say that Violette ever did that. I'm just talking about it. She should pick up, perhaps, the telephone and say, you know, my husband saw, etc., etc. It's out. We are damaging the personality of this individual, ourselves. If it is something which is harming the cause, I have a duty to contact institutions, either the local assembly. If I don't want to go to the local assembly, I go to a counselor in private, confidentially, or to an auxiliary board member, or even to an assistant auxiliary board member. I say, this is harmful for the cause. I'm telling you this, but I will shut up. Now it's with you. You have to decide what to do with it. I have discharged my responsibility. I have to conceal. Baha'u'llah, in one of his prayers, he makes us say, Ey Sattar, Parde bar Madar. One of the titles of God is the Concealer. Sattar. Satr is to conceal. So, we should follow his example. See how many times in the hidden words Baha'u'llah says, I came and I saw you in such and such a condition. I left, I went back to my retreats. I said nothing because I did not want to shame you. 2-3 times he says this in the hidden words. Why? Because he's teaching us how to conceal, how to be quiet, and how to not gossip, not backbite, how to forgive. A sin-covering eye like Abdul Baha. And not only to forgive, but to forget. You have every right to say, but Mr. Nakhjavani, how can I forget? It's in my memory. How can I forget? What are you talking about? You are right. Yes, you cannot forget. It has been registered. That's true. But there is one thing which is you have registered, but there is another thing emotional related to it, the bitterness of it. You have to be able to forgive the bitterness of it. You cannot forget the actual events, but when you keep it in your heart, day after day, year after year, decade after decade, 40 years, 50 years, you still remember it? The bitterness is still there. It has festered. It has become poison in your body. Get rid of it, for God's sake. Get it out of your system. Let bygones be bygones. Wash it away. In one of his tablets, Baha'u'llah says, forgive so that I will forgive you. Not only forgive, wash it away so that I too will wash away your sins. It's not only forgiving and washing away are two different stages. Washing away is You forget everything. You get rid of it. You forget the bitterness of it. Finished. Gone. To have nothing but love in our hearts. That's the thing. That's Baha'i life. Selfless love. Pure love. And we should die in this condition. Not carrying all this heavy load, all this poison in our hearts and go to the next world. That's why Baha'u'llah says in the gleanings that blessed are those who die in a spirit of detachment. We have to be detached. But get rid of all this poison from our system. If you can, will you share an example of how the power of the covenant strengthened you in your service to the cause? I thought I put this among the questions that I could answer, but I'm wondering now what I should say. Well, the only thing that I can remember is that when we were pioneering in Africa, there was a lot of personality clashes because most of the members on the local assembly, let us say, of Kampala, or the National Spiritual Assembly of Central and East Africa were pioneers. And God knows we pioneers, we fought all the way for our ideas. We insisted about our ideas. And there was many clashes, many clashes. And this, I knew, everybody knew that this was not good. And I was sure that when the decision was taken, it was so that Shoghi Effendi would be pleased. That was our aim. We didn't want Shoghi Effendi to know that we were disunited. There were differences amongst us. We would talk about it. Let's forget. Let's forgive. Let's not keep this bitterness in our hearts. And we did it because of our love for Shoghi Effendi. We didn't want Shoghi Effendi to be ever sad. He was so happy with the work in Africa. We didn't want him to hear anything negative. And I realized that I was not the only person. All the other pioneers felt the same way. And we were the majority. Because the native pioneers, the local pioneers, were the minority. When I was on pilgrimage, he asked me one day, he said, how many African believers are on the National Spiritual Assembly? Of course, he knew because we had sent him reports. I said 3 Africans and 6 pioneers. He said, this is not good. The next question. He said, do the African members of the National Assembly contribute, participate in the consultations? That was a difficult question to answer, because what happened was we pioneers were the first to speak, and we spoke very emphatically and loudly, and we would be very unhappy if someone opposed our point of view. We would raise our voices. We would say, now what are you talking about, to a fellow member? Oh, this is nonsense, what you are saying. Contrary to the spirit of Baha'i consultation. Now Shoghi Effendi is asking me, and the poor African members, they hear this, they hear that. What is happening? We are fighting. We are using impolite words, indecent words that a Baha'i should never say. And we are fighting for our point of view. Now, how could I explain that to Shoghi Effendi? I was really embarrassed. Of course, all these thoughts came to me quickly. And Shoghi Effendi had asked me, do they participate? Finally, I said, the beloved guardian knows very well how enthusiastic the pioneers are. That was my answer. He understood. He said, this is not good. He said, the chairman of the National Assembly should first call on the African members to express their opinion. And after they have expressed their opinion, then he could permit the pioneers to speak. I came back and I told the members, we were all, frankly, ashamed of ourselves because we knew what we were doing. When I found Baha'u'llah several decades ago, there are many study classes. Now there seems to be only Ruhiyyih classes. Ruhiyyih is wonderful, but what about study of the Kitab-i-Iqan, the hidden words, the epistle to the son of the wolf, Abdul Baha's works, Shoghi Effendi's letters? There is nothing in the letters of the House of Justice to say you shouldn't do these things. They're doing their thing, the institutional thing are there. It doesn't mean that you should not read all these letters yourself, or these tablets yourself, or have a small group of you read these things together, or even ask your local assembly or the National Assembly that would it be all right if we had a special class for ourselves of these books? Of course you have. You are permitted. Of course you are free. When did the House of Justice say that it's only Ruhiyyih? If someone has said this, the person who has said this did not understand. Of course, this is individual study, individual deepening. Baha'u'llah tells me, immerse yourself in the ocean of my words, of my utterances, and discover the pearls. That this is an instruction to individual. How can the Universal House of Justice don't do this? No, it's impossible. There is a misunderstanding there. The last hidden word encourages us to earn a livelihood by our calling. How should the importance of this be balanced with the duty to serve the faith directly? My dear friends, the greatest service is teaching the cause. It doesn't require time. It requires us to be conscious of the fact that I have to mention the faith in my contacts with people. I beg you, friends, take the words of Shoghi Effendi and Abdul Baha seriously. Don't say this is another Ali now who has come, he's sermonizing for us. It's not so. Maybe I sound to be sermonizing, but I'm trying to beg you, please. The American Baha'i community cannot stand on one leg only, on the institutional. We have been given two legs. We have been given two eyes. We have been given two arms. Birds have two wings. If we want to fly, we have to use both wings, not one wing. The institutional has to do its duty. They are doing their duty. No one has said that I should not teach, I should not work, I should not mention the faith, I should not mix with people. If every one of you silently would pledge tonight that from now on you will carry out the wish of Shoghi Effendi to mention the faith every day,